I don't know. This kind of setup that I have here doesn't seem as like singular topic as most of the others used to, so it's kind of hard to say exactly what's supposed to be featured, but from what I can see here, it seems like there's a bit of falling into love, there's a bit of relationship talk that I need to address, and there is going to be a bit of a gender war, which I have sort of missed but not missed at the same time. But I will get to that in a little bit, because before I do that, there is something that I do want to talk about. And I know I said I wouldn't be discussing stories like this because that started sounding a little too normal, but in this particular case, there is something that needs to be said about it. So the story itself, and I'm just gonna read out the title for you. A 26-year-old Pennsylvania coach has been charged for having sex with a 17-year-old student. Now, after reading a story like this one, you're probably already ready to talk about blah blah, we said no dealing with pedophile teachers, blah blah. But in this particular case, I feel like there's a problem here because, and I kid you not, that wasn't the end of the title. The rest of the title reads, "The student went and told the police they were in a secret relationship," end quote. So in my head, I'm busy thinking, if kid already knew about it and was already in some sort of a relationship with babe, nigga, why the fuck would you talk about shit like this? As in, because there's just some shit about this entire story that just sounds a little bit weird to me. And it's not the fact that this babe was having a thing with a 17-year-old. I think that one is not too bad of an issue, and I'll explain why in a little bit, but it's just the way this guy brought it out. But let me just read the story for you real quick. All right, so the story says, and I quote, "A 26-year-old javelin coach that is accused of having a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old male student at a school in Pennsylvania has been charged with institutional sexual assault and sexual assault by a sports official. Hannah Marth reportedly texted the teen and invited him to her residence on May 22nd at about 2 a.m. and initiated sexual contact," the Northampton County District Attorney's Office said in a release. Marth, who is a teacher in the Eastern Area School District, confessed to having a romantic involvement with the teen in May of 2021. The teen allegedly told the police he and Marth were in a relationship that lasted until October of 2022. An abuse of that relationship shows a coach's blatant disregard for the well-being of those he or she coached and, above all, the law. This defendant defied that trust when she committed this alleged crime against the victim, the district attorney's office said. Marth had been a standout athlete and a member of the track and field team where she attended in Northampton. She was arraigned on Thursday afternoon before being freed on a $75,000 unsecured bail around 4 weeks ago. End quote. Now, here's the thing, alright? I'm not the type to speak for having relations with a minor or even someone, no matter the age gap, going for someone who is especially in their teens and under the age of 18. But in this particular case, do you guys remember that thing that I was saying about having a gray line for people who are between like the age of 18 and 20 or 18 and 21? So they can pretty much date anywhere up and down the age range, whether it's a teenager, whether it's someone who's in their 20s or 30s. Now, in this particular case, I'd probably want to extend it to the 17-year-old just so that this shit can't seem as serious as it is. Because the thing here is, this dude and this babe had a relationship for over a year, all right? Started in May 2021, ended in October 2022. But very recently has now decided to go and release that information out. I'm guessing just before he turns 18, or, very well aware that he could be 18 or some shit. Like, this just sounds as though the young kid had a problem with this babe possibly moving on with someone else and decided to go and burn her for this. Like, that's literally what it seems like. Because you were probably 16. I'll assume he was 16 or maybe even 17 at the time they started dating. And they've managed to go on for an entire year and they've had a secret relationship, possibly with banging. And you're saying that this kid should still not be liable for anything because he's a kid? Like, the difference between how a 17-year-old thinks and how an 18-year-old thinks actually isn't all that different. It's actually roughly the same. And I'm not saying that she was right in shagging the 17-year-old. I'm just saying that the 17-year-old is wrong in going to report her, considering that the guy was very well aware of what it was that he was doing. Of course, legally, she wasn't supposed to do that shit, but dude went ahead and reported her, knowing very well that it's not like they were doing the right thing when they got into that quote-unquote secret relationship. So, in this particular case, I don't stand with this dude. I honestly think he was probably just butthurt or some shit. Which is very unfortunate because normally I do stand for dudes on this podcast, which I probably should have started in a better way by saying, welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who used to wish that he could bang one of those high school teachers. I'm sure if you're a guy and there was a hot teacher in your school, you probably had the same exact feelings, just didn't want to voice that shit. He's a man who doesn't mind breathing exercises if you've got that asthma. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Tweet Street, the show where we take a deep dive into Twitter, pull up a couple of tweets and break them down a little bit. Now, as usual, if you know the drill, you can repeat it after me. If you don't know the drill, it's okay, I'ma say it for you. And if you know the drill, but you're not doing anything about it, then what are you waiting for? Because it is your chance to become a contributor to this podcast and a contributor in making these episodes, which you seem to enjoy. And it's a very simple drill, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @BagakaTheD, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle, and I will take it from there and I will handle it accordingly. On Facebook and on IG, if it happens to be a screenshot or a screen grab or even ended up on a reel, then the place to send it to is @Breaktime on West Side on Facebook or on IG. The DMs are always open, and I will be more than happy to take it from there and handle it accordingly. Now, of course, I have eaten into quite a bit of time on this episode, but before I get into the tweets that I am supposed to be discussing, I want us to talk about a very, very fine lady by the name of LaLa Anthony. Now, LaLa Anthony, who is supposedly about 40 years old, is claiming that only 22-year-olds want to date her. Now, she said recently, and I quote, "Here's how it goes. This is what I'm finding. I don't understand this. I'm not saying when you get older you want to date younger guys, but when you get older, only younger guys want to date you." End quote. And of course, for someone who is as fire as her, because by all means, if you don't know who or what LaLa Anthony is, just go and watch Power. I think that's the most recent project she was on. She played Lakeisha and she had some fire ass sex scenes. I think that was either in season 4 or season 5. But all in all, she's a very beautiful babe, and she's wondering why older guys or guys around her age don't want to date her. To which my personal analysis of this, just by looking at who she is and the kind of image she has out here in these streets, would like to think that I actually have the answer. And the reality of it is, most young men like their women just like they like their cars. Older with a hell of a lot of mileage. Okay, maybe that was a little bit of a reach there. Plus, this is mostly just a joke, and honestly, I just needed to find a place to use this joke because I just had it in my pocket for so long. But anyways, all of that red pill shit aside, like no mention of mileage or anything. That one was just for fun. It's mostly a case of the kind of market that she's marketing herself to. Like, not in a bad way, but if you look at her IG, it's, I won't call it thirst traps, but it's a shorty that's trying to show her body and, you know, the kind of shit that would seem as thirst traps for most young guys. And yes, I know, and I've checked, it's not like she only dresses skimpily. She actually does dress pretty decently on the gram, even with, you know, a couple of the chest showing here and there, and, you know, some very, very nice body hugging clothes quite a lot of the time. But the reality of it is, most of the people that are going to look at that and her body are particularly young dudes that would want to hit, not the 40-plus-year-old guys that are out there, because the kind of thing that they're looking for, she's not portraying out there. Although, to be very honest, I don't even think that she is 40 years old. I think she's a little bit more than that, because I remember, like, the first time I ever saw her was when she was acting as a presenter on You Got Served, which is a movie from 2004. So, considering that she was particularly young, assuming that she was probably about like 24 or 23 or 22 or some shit, like, shorty has to be closer to mid-40s than early 40s. But anyways, this isn't a debate on her age. This is something about older guys and why much older guys aren't going for her. And the reality of it is, a lot of guys that are in their 40s and they're single are either single and they're not intending on getting married or settling down with a babe, so they're circulating a bunch of young bitches that they can fly out for a lot less than they get her, or they have a baby mama and kid, which I don't think she'd be particularly down for, especially considering that she's worth, a pretty good stack of cash, and she's been with a couple of guys who are pretty good in terms of cash. So getting a guy that makes a lot less than her would probably not really be something that she'd want to do. But all in all, that's just the reality. A lot of guys who are in their 40s, whether early, mid, or late, have either settled down or they're not trying to settle down. So it's very hard to find a guy who's single, who's in his mid to late 40s, and is making good enough money and would want to be in a relationship with this babe. Of which, even though that was the case, the way she's marketed herself seems to appeal more to a younger generation of people as opposed to an older one. Because if a guy is wanting to settle down with a babe in her 40s, he expects some good old-fashioned wife shit. But then again, I really can't speak too much about 40 rules. I'm not 40 myself, and I honestly wish all the best with whichever guy she ends up being with, if she does get to be with a guy at some point. And I will leave it at that because I have a bunch of tweets to deal with. So let us move things on to our very first tweet of this episode. What does it mean when a man says he's quote-unquote not ready for a relationship? He's not ready? It's literally that. He's not ready. I think that one's probably about as self-explanatory as it comes. Because the thing is, it's either the guy clearly does not want to be in a relationship, or the guy doesn't want to be in a relationship with you. And the reasons behind those two are particularly countless for me right now, because I don't think I have enough time to explain all of them. But I honestly don't think that you should be asking us, or at least asking people, what a guy means when he says that he's not ready for a relationship. I think you should be asking the guy what it is he means when he says that he doesn't want to be in a relationship, or at least he's not ready for a relationship. Because a lot of the answers that a bunch of people can tell you, whether on the internet, whether it's friends or some shit like that, might not be as true or as realistic as when the guy himself tells you. Because interestingly enough, there's a lot of guys that would like to get into relationships that just don't feel like they can't, or don't feel like they're ready for them for one reason or another. Sometimes it could be a case of them not being in the best situation, either physically, psychologically, mentally, or even financially, of which, don't ask me about the physical part, but it is what it is. There are some guys that might generally just not want to be in a relationship with you, or might not like the idea of relationships. And as such, they'll say that they're not ready for a relationship, and that's particularly the truth. Are there some guys that don't want to be in a relationship, and then the for you part is what they haven't added? Yes, they're gonna be there, and they're probably quite a bit, but the reality of it is, I do think that most guys who say that they're not ready for a relationship are just flat out not ready for a relationship. And they do need to get themselves onto a better page, at least on a mental level, if not, financial or otherwise, so that they can actually feel like they're comfortable enough to get into a relationship. Because a lot of times when you end up trying to push a guy like that, who's saying that they're not ready for a relationship, into a relationship, if they do end up saying yes, they actually end up not being that great of a partner to be with, because there's some problem that might arise, and a lot of those guys will run towards the scapegoat of, I told you I wasn't ready for a relationship. Hell, some of those guys might just flat out just misbehave, and you'll try and forgive it, all in the name of trying to help dude heal or move on or become ready for it, to which he probably won't even get ready for that shit. So why force the guy? Why try to force issues instead of just accepting that the person clearly doesn't want to be with you, whether it's right now or, ever, and just move the hell on? That shit will save you a lot of trouble. Alright? But anyways, all that said and done, let us move it on to our very next tweet of this episode. Can you fall in love with someone you have not met but communicate with every single day? Okay, can you really call it love? I think that is probably the question that I'd ask next, because if you were to call it love, the concept of love itself isn't fully understood by all of us. Whether you look at it from a lustful perspective, whether you're trying to look at it from like brotherly or like sibling love or some shit, or whether you look at it romantically, like, to be very honest, it's very hard to actually really define and quantify love. Love is one of those things that you just have to feel. But at the same time, the feeling of love is very closely felt with the feeling of infatuation as well as the feeling of attachment. You can develop a sense of attachment to someone. Can you fall in love with them? I don't know. I honestly don't think so. But if blind people can fall in love with someone and yet they've never seen them, then I do believe that it could be possible, because you haven't particularly seen the person, but you've interacted with them well enough that you probably feel like you're connected to them in some way. That is probably what I can call whatever it is that you're feeling at the time. Like that feeling of connection, that feeling of attachment. But love? It's a little bit hard to say, because there's a lot of times when you find people are connecting like this. Like, of course, there's the whole series called Catfished and everything, where people will go and toy with each other and shit. And I don't necessarily mean that, but imagine it's someone that you've been talking to for a while and you've never met them. Then you meet them and say you're a visual person, and this person in your view is ugly or isn't good looking, or you just wouldn't want to be seen with that particular person because of how they look. At the end of the day, will you really still fall in love with them? Like, will you really call whatever it is that you felt love? Like, that's the question that I'd want to ask. Also, if you haven't managed to experience more of what this person is in terms of like tangible, real life scene behaviors, then can you really say that whatever it is that you're feeling is still technically love? Because you haven't experienced what I'd call at least a good extent of someone to actually make a full, complete, like judgeable decision. You get me? So, to be very honest, while this is still a debatable question, I personally don't think it's love. I think it's more of a sense of attachment or a sense of attraction to how someone thinks and how someone talks to you. And that is a very, very different thing as opposed to something like love, at least in my opinion. But anyways, all that said and done, let us move it on to our very next tweet of this episode. Men are stronger than women physically, but in every other aspect, women are by far the superior sex. If you break a woman's heart 10 times, she will find the strength to heal herself 10 times. Break a man's heart just once, he is damaged forever. He actually won't be the same person ever again, nor will he fully trust another woman. Women can be single parents and do a great job of it. Most men will find it difficult to do it alone and usually will depend on their mother to help him raise the kids. Men could never handle the same pain they give women. The truth is that women can live without men, and us men can't live without you women. As a female, when you start to know this, you become more careful and selective with who you entertain or give your love to. And as a man, when you realize this, you appreciate your woman better. Okay. To be very honest, this is bullshit. I honestly feel like this whole men versus women thing was probably a tired out subject, but considering the kind of engagement that this person got for posting up this tweet, I guess there's some people that are still going into this entire thing like a fight, or they just want to support something that's very pro-women or anti-men or some shit. But either way, I will try to dissect this in as much of an objective way as I can as a guy, because at the end of the day, I am still a guy. Now, first of all, and this is something that I just noticed right off the bat, this babe said that if you break a woman's heart 10 times, she will find the strength to heal herself 10 times, but men won't be able to do that. To which my question is, bitch, why the fuck are you having your heart broken by the same person 10 times? 10 fucking times. Like, by the time you're getting to time number 6 or number 7, you're probably enjoying that shit if it's going for 10 times. Like, how the fuck are you about to take the same hurt from the same person that many times? Like, it's even good that guys don't take this shit so much. Like, we go through that shit 2, 3, maybe 4 times, and afterwards, even though we love the babe, we're like, you know what, fuck this shit, let's leave and move on. But you, the babe, I don't know, maybe as a demonstration of love or some shit, or trying to show that you care about your partner, you decide to stick by and they hurt you 10 times? What the fuck? How the hell is that supposed to make you superior in some way? But anyways, that aside, she did mention that if you break a man's heart just once, he is damaged forever. He actually won't be the same person ever again, nor will he fully trust another woman. To which, when I read that, the first thing that clicked in my mind is yes, at least for the first half of that entire thing, or at least for like the first 75% of the entire thing. Because after your heart's been broken, after you've gone through a bunch of shit courtesy of a toxic babe or some shit, like, are you not supposed to learn from that shit and adapt and move on? Like, isn't that the best thing to do? Because if you've been treated like shit and you've gone through shit and you realize that you allowed yourself to be in that position, or you were in that position based off of a couple of different actions, why not adapt so that those same situations either don't find you or you don't end up in those same circumstances again? Like, is that not a good thing? Like, that's the shit that all human beings are built to do. Adapt and improve. Like, that's literally like nature 101. Although I will state for a fact that, you know, the whole never trusting a woman thing is a bad thing, to which if you're a guy and you went through a bunch of shit and you don't trust a babe, I do think that there is still a stage of grief that you need to go through, which is acceptance. Because at the end of the day, in as much as yes, your shorty treated you badly or you had a shitty experience with like 2 or 3 babes, just because some people do bad things doesn't mean that all people are bad. Like, that's just something that I'd probably tell most of those guys, and I'd probably want them to get to a point where they actually believe that. But all in all, if you can improve, if you can change who you are as a person so that you don't get to the same situation where you are damaged, then doesn't that make you a better person? But all that said and done, like, I don't want to dwell too much on the other things, because she spoke about women being better single parents, which I think is shit. Single parenthood is absolutely hard as fuck. It's just that it's mostly single moms that are left with the kids as opposed to the dads. But all in all, whoever you are as a single parent, you actually do require assistance, and you do get it from either neighbors or from relatives and family and shit like that. So there's no saying of, oh, because it's a single mom, the baby will fare out better. Actually, on a statistical level, it actually shows a hell of a lot worse. From things like likelihood to be in prison, to likelihood to end up in like certain bad situations. Like, at the end of the day, the concept of having a single parent household is something that I think should be avoided by most people, if anything. But that said, there's a lot of BS that she adds here, which is, you know, very pro women. To which I'll say that, to be very honest, I don't think that men and women should be doing this whole versus thing. Like, the whole men versus women thing, it's pointless, because there's no trying to show that a man is better than a woman or a woman is better than a man overall, because we're two very different entities. This is comparing apples to oranges, and frankly, I feel like this whole comparison thing of men and women doesn't do anything more than just rile people up and create more division. Of which, it's not like I'm trying to compete with women for women. I'm trying to compete against other men for women. And it's not like women are competing against other men for men. They're competing against other women for men. You know, not unless if either one of those two genders is bisexual, which is an entirely different argument. But all in all, this whole men versus women thing, absolutely pointless. And also, like I said earlier, you cannot keep on doing the same thing over and over again expecting a different result. So I think some babes are particularly stupid for having their heart broken 10 fucking times. But then again, I might be wrong about that shit, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On Twitter, it is @BagakaTheD. On Facebook and on IG, it is @Breaktime on Westside. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.